Welcome to Politics for Patriots. Here's your host, the eviscerator of progressive nonsense, the executioner of imbecility, and the grim reaper of BS, Eddie Zipper.
Welcome to episode 74 of the Politics for Patriots podcast. If you haven't yet, please subscribe on iTunes, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. And remember, every time you subscribe to a conservative podcast, a liberal somewhere sheds a tear.
Your tears are so yummy and sweet.
This is going to be a fun show today because we are going to talk about one of my absolute favorite subjects. I love when the Democrats bring it up. We're going to talk today about impeachment. And I'm going to give you some angles on it that you won't get from the mainstream media. I promise you that. There's no analyst at the long table on CNN who's going to say these things. Speaking of the CNN long table, did anybody catch their coverage the day that the Mueller report was released and Bill Barr gave the press conference on what's in the Mueller report? It was like they gathered around to prove that everything President Trump has been saying about them is true. There were 8 people at the long table, and not one of them disagreed with the hysterical nonsense of the one who spoke before. Every second of the coverage was like, the objective anchor says, loaded question, is Bill Barr the worst person on earth? And all the 8 pundits, as quick as they can, go, oh! Yep. All right, so now we're moving into Act 3 of the mainstream media and Democrats' little anti-Trump play that they're putting together. And Act 3 is going to be all about impeachment. I think Jedediah Billa on Fox and Friends Weekend this morning said it best.
Impeachment is the new collusion.
That was awesome. Impeachment is the new collusion. That is 100% correct. And over the next few weeks, you're going to see a lot more Democrats morphing into Maxine Waters and saying,
Impeach 45!
Why? Because he's obviously so
contemptible.
I'm going to take it into a little bit more detail here and say Act 1 of the Democrats and the mainstream media's anti-Trump drama was the collusion. Act 2 was obstruction, because they needed something to get him on when they failed to get him on collusion. They knew there were no broken laws. They really knew this all along. That's why they tried to pass a bill to make it illegal for Trump to fire Mueller, because then they wanted to try to goad Trump into firing Mueller so that then they would have a law that he broke that they could impeach him on. It's literally the exact same thing that happened to Andrew Johnson.
Gentlemen, I'm here to help you with your history report.
Most people know that President Andrew Johnson was impeached, but most people do not know why, which is because he fired a cabinet secretary. I think it was the Secretary of War. Johnson fired him. He got impeached for that. What you're saying, how could that possibly be? It's not against the law for the president to fire a cabinet member. All those cabinet members serve at the pleasure of the president. Well, when Lincoln was killed and Johnson became president, the radical Republicans in Congress passed an unconstitutional law making it illegal for Johnson to fire cabinet members. They wanted to keep Lincoln's cabinet members in. Johnson broke that law. That is what he was impeached for. There were like 11 articles of impeachment, but they all restate the same thing. And later the Supreme Court told us that that law was unconstitutional anyway. I've been through that whole story on the show before, but it's instructive and worth mentioning again anytime you talk about impeachment, because it's such an excellent example of the fact that the impeachment process is political. But we're going to get to all that. All right, so let me hop back aboard my train of thought here. What was I talking about? Okay, so Act 1 of the Democrat and the mainstream media's anti-Trump drama was collusion. That's what I said. Act 2 was obstruction of justice, and Act 3 is now going to be a discussion of impeachment. Now, if you are a supporter of President Trump, please do not let the impeachment talk worry you one iota. That's what I always worry about. I worry about people, I have them in my family, who just spend a lot of time and energy worrying about these things. The Democrats say they're going to impeach President Trump, and then if you're a Trump supporter, you get all worried about that. But this should not cause you one single second of worry. Today's show is all about explaining why you don't need to worry about that. And that starts with our lovely friend, the Constitution of the United States. God, I love the Constitution so much. It's always there for you. When I explain impeachment in my political science classes, almost 100% of students begin with a misunderstanding of what impeachment is. And I don't want to sound condescending here when I talk to you about it, because I know that a lot of you actually already know how this works. But I'm going to take a few seconds and I'm going to mansplain to you how the impeachment process works.
There is something called mansplaining. Have you heard about this?
We know what mansplaining is.
Mansplaining is when a man will condescendingly explain something to a woman that she already knows.
That's from Silicon Valley, which is probably the funniest show on TV if you ever get a chance to watch it. All right, so time for the mansplaining. The House of Representatives has the sole power of impeachment. The Senate has no say in whether or not to impeach the President of the United States. Only the House of Representatives has a say in it, and it only takes a simple majority, 50% plus one. So if everybody's there voting, 218 representatives have to want to impeach the president. So it's easier to impeach the President of the United States than it is to pass a bill. Passing a bill requires, if you ignore the procedural filibuster, passing a bill requires a simple majority in both houses. Which means if you have a split Congress like we do right now, Democrat majority in the House, Republican majority in the Senate, it's crazy super hard to pass a bill. That is not so with impeachment. To impeach the president, all you need is a simple majority in the House of Representatives. Very few things are that easy to do in our government, but it is very easy to impeach someone. So the House of Representatives has the sole power of impeachment, and it is currently majority Democrat. But what is impeachment? It is not removal from office. If you compare it to our criminal justice system, it is charging someone with a crime. It is not convicting someone of a crime. So what can they impeach the president for? According to the Constitution, treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. What are high crimes and misdemeanors? Well, because impeachment is a political process and not an actual function of the judicial branch, high crimes and misdemeanors are whatever the House of Representatives decide are high crimes and misdemeanors. If 50% plus one, or 218 if everybody's voting, if 218 representatives say, okay, that's a high crime or misdemeanor, then it is. And the president is impeached. If less than that are willing to call it a high crime or misdemeanor, then it is not, and the president is not impeached. There's no court that fairly looks at evidence and decides if the president has committed high crimes and misdemeanors. The actual justice system has already tried that in this case. Mueller just spent years doing the most exhaustive investigation that the U.S. government is capable of, and he could not get the evidence to charge President Trump with a crime. So now, his only option is to hand it off to a political branch. He has to hand it off to the political branch, the Congress, the legislative branch. He basically says, I couldn't get Trump, but Congress can, because that's the only branch of government that can charge someone with political crimes. And the political crime Trump has committed, make no mistake about it, the political crime that President Trump has committed in this case is winning the 2016 election. But only the House of Representatives can charge someone with the crime of winning the 2016 election. I mean, Mueller's investigation couldn't turn up any crimes. Does anyone here think that Congress can investigate something better and more thoroughly than a special counsel? No, nobody thinks that. That is laughable. Congressional investigations are a complete and total joke. Congress is like Inspector Gadget if he didn't have Penny and Brain helping him. It's not because they're incompetent. It's because they're 100% political. That's how Congress operates, especially in the House of Representatives. Okay, a term in the House is only 2 years, which means that the representatives in the House are kept on a very short leash by voters. Their entire existence is one long, never-ending re-election campaign. And you cannot do a serious investigation in a situation like that. When Congress tries to investigate things, both sides have a predetermined outcome that they want to reach. And that is a terrible environment for investigating anything. It's a total joke. I told you earlier, impeaching the president is equivalent to charging him with a crime and requires 50% plus one in the House of Representatives, and that is very easy to do. But, and Sir Mix-a-Lot would be pleased because this is a big but only the Senate can convict the president of that quote-unquote crime. And that takes a 2/3 super majority. In other words, if every senator is present, it would take the agreement of 67 senators to remove the president from office. That does not happen if the crime is political. That does not happen if the House of Representatives has used their impeachment power in a political way, which would be the case here. Only 2 presidents have been impeached in U.S. history. I already mentioned one of them, Andrew Johnson. The other one, of course, Bill Clinton. We probably all remember that one. 0 presidents have been removed from office. Nixon resigned, or he would have been impeached and probably removed from office by the Senate because he actually committed crimes. It wasn't just a political, let's get Nixon, like this case would be. He had actually committed crimes. All right, so we have Johnson and Bill Clinton are the 2 that have actually been impeached. If, in this case against Donald Trump, the House of Representatives impeached the president, it would be, and they would have, the weakest impeachment case in American history. It would not get a 2/3 vote in the Senate to remove President Trump from office. It would not even get a simple majority in the Senate to remove President Trump from office. So, if this happened, Trump's presidency after the Senate trial would continue until the end of his term. That means that impeaching the president would serve no purpose other than embarrassing him and dragging down his agenda, which are both very good things for the Democrats, which they would enjoy a tremendous amount. Of course, how much it would drag down his agenda is questionable because President Trump is the most high-energy president since Theodore Roosevelt. So you can really only drag him down so much. Do you think Democrats are sitting around going, political impeachment has not worked for anyone in the history of the United States,
but it might work for us?
Okay, are you ready? This is the exciting part. Here we go. And this is kind of complicated, so I'll do my best to fully explain it. If Democrats in the House vote to impeach President Trump, they will be voting for him to win the 2020 election. And they will be voting for Republicans to take back the House of Representatives. Okay? If you get a breaking news text that says, House Democrats vote yay on articles of impeachment against Donald Trump, that breaking news text may as well say, Donald Trump wins re-election. And let me explain why. Everything in politics operates on political capital. That's the only reason that anyone can accomplish anything in politics. It's the only way, is to spend political capital. You accumulate political capital by promising people things and getting elected, and then you spend it. It works just like money. You can see it. President Obama, his approval rating is high. It's like in the 60s. And then they pass Obamacare, and President Obama signs it into law. What happens to his approval rating? Big drop. That's an expenditure of political capital, and Obamacare cost him all the political capital of the first term of his presidency. So it wasn't just expensive for us, it was expensive for him too. Okay, so political capital works just like money, right? You go to work every day, you build up capital, and then you spend that capital however you want. It's your capital. You can spend it however you want. If a political party, in this case the Democrats, spends their political capital doing the things they promised to do, that's a good investment on being reelected. That's like taking the money you made going to work and investing it in real estate or something that pays off in the long run. But if a political party uses their capital to do something like impeach the president, that's like dropping your money on an expensive car that's going to impress the people you want to impress. It's going to do that. It's going to impress the people. If you're the Democrats, impeaching Trump is going to impress the base. If you're a person who goes to work and works hard and you buy the Corvette, that's going to impress the people you want to impress. But it is going to depreciate fast. A Monmouth poll conducted last week showed that 39% think that Congress should continue investigating President Trump. 54% say move on. So people already don't want the House Democrats spending their political capital on impeaching President Trump. Why? Because everyone knows that Trump didn't collude with the Russians. That was an invented narrative. The 39% who think that Congress should continue investigating, those are hardcore partisans who never lose hope that somehow somebody will be able to dig up dirt to harm President Trump. Literally everybody else wants to move on. What? But I thought the investigations were sexy. Are they not sexy anymore to the American people?
The investigations are sexy. The investigations are sexy. The investigations are sexy.
That drop cost me like $20 because I had to buy the rights to the music so that I could play it on the podcast, but it was so worth it. I bought the rights to use it in perpetuity, so it'll probably pop up again. That might be an example of someone not using their capital well. I don't know. It was worth it to me. All right, but the point here is that America is rejecting the narrative. Most Americans believe that if Democrats want President Trump out of office, they need to actually beat him in an election, which they don't want to do. That's not how Democrats want to win. They only want to change and manipulate the system in order to win. They don't actually want to win by going places and saying what their ideas are, because their ideas are ridiculous bullshit. That's the soundbite that keeps on giving right there. All right, so the point is, it is like the country is weary of the impeachment already, and it hasn't even begun yet. Because really, the whole process has been going on for years. The process of trying to, get opposition research from the executive branch, right? Robert Mueller's investigation, and then use that to impeach the president. That has been the end game all along. And so if they go through with it, by the time they lose in the Senate, which I guarantee you that they will, that is without a doubt 100% the outcome that impeaching President Trump would be headed for, no question there. Democrats have a 100% failure on the impeachment issue, I promise you. So if they do it, by the time they lose in the Senate and the whole process is over, they've spent all of their possible political capital on a losing gambit that was destined to lose from day one. They have exhausted the country with this nonsense, and consequently they have exhausted their political capital. And the ultimate payoff for that would be Trump being vindicated again. Yet another branch of government has said that President Trump did not commit a crime. That's how it'll end. Meanwhile, they have candidates trying to run for the Democratic nomination, and they're dooming the eventual nominee. Why? Because the nominee is going to need all of the Democrats' political capital to win the election. If they spend it all on the nonsense of impeaching Trump, they'll be left with nothing to win a presidential election. And they'll be especially doomed in the House of Representatives, who will take the majority of the blame for this, along with the Democratic Party. Every single Democratic politician knows that what I just said is true. Well, maybe not every single one. Every smart Democratic politician knows that what I just said is true. Even the ones who say they support impeaching Trump, like Elizabeth Warren. Oh, I'm sorry. I meant to call her by her real name.
Princess Bubbling Spring that runs in the meadow.
So if they all know the political math, which they do, why do they support doing it? Why is Elizabeth Warren saying she supports impeaching Trump when she knows all of what I just said is true? It's simple. She's lying. She's going to have her traditional Native American dessert and eat it too. She's counting on this not happening, right? And so is anybody else, any other Democratic politician who is pushing for it. So they get the political benefit of making the base happy by saying they support it, while at the same time knowing that the House leaders are absolutely never going to spend the political capital jumping off of that cliff. Now, when I say they all know this, I mean the smart, experienced ones like Nancy Pelosi and Elizabeth Warren. I would be shocked if Rashida Tlaib or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez have the slightest clue how the impeachment process even works.
I am not the expert.
That's an evergreen drop right there. It's always good. Pretty much every week I can use it for something, because she is not the expert on anything. Well, Instagram, social media, and demagoguery, maybe. All right, so what's the bottom line here? The bottom line, Trump will not be impeached by the House of Representatives. But if I am overestimating the Democrats, and they're not as smart as I think they are, and they don't know that everything I've said in this show is true, on that off chance, and the Democrats do impeach President Trump, you can go ahead and book your D.C. hotel for his 2020 inauguration, because the choice Democrats face right now is this. Do we want to impeach Trump and lose that impeachment process? Or do we want to have a chance at winning the 2020 presidential election and keeping the House? And for Democrats, that is going to be a pretty easy choice. They want to win elections. They don't want to lose impeachments. All right, that's it for today. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe on iTunes, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get podcasts. And reviews on iTunes are always appreciated. Those are a huge help if you can spare the few seconds that it takes to review the show. That's it for today. I'm out of here.
Contemptible.
You just listened to Politics for Patriots with Eddie Zipper. Email the show at patriots@eddiezipper.com. And please subscribe.